So I'll tell you a little bit about me for those of you who aren't familiar faces yet. So I am Shanna Bradley, and I am a doula, international doula trainer, childbirth educator, and I just have a real passion for working cross-culturally, working internationally, and for birth. And the Lord's kind of just combined that all together to be able to um, use birth work as ministry. And so as I had discussions with people, people wanted more inspiration in that field. And I feel like we all need, my camera's always going to be wonky when I talk about Jesus. Um, and uh, and so I just felt like there was a place where we could come together in birth work. I'll hopefully fix it a little bit. Good thing I'm not the one talking. And just be inspired by each other and fellowship together as we do this work, because it's exhausting and it's hard to be on call, and it's always a spiritual warfare. I had something just come up like literally an hour ago, um, that I'm just like, really right now, not the best timing. So I had a good cry, and here I am. And so this is really just a time to like fellowship, be inspired, and have different people share their stories of how they use birth work as ministry. So I am going to turn it over to Melissa. She is somebody that my camera has really inspired me for, I'm just gonna.
I don't think anyone's speaking. I think it looks like what happened is she disappeared. And so I think we're waiting. I'm just reading the chat, but I'm not in charge of anything. But I think that probably we're just waiting for her to log back in, is what it looks like to me. Yeah,
I second that.
yeah, here she comes.
So of course it kicked me off altogether. I'm so sorry. So I don't know what you heard, but I just want you to
Not
be,
much.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I want you to be inspired by what Melissa does. And yeah, so I will, since God doesn't want me talking, I'm gonna hand it over. We're gonna do Q&A at the end. So have your questions ready, and be able to ask, how she does what she does, and hopefully it will inspire you and kind of roll over into what you guys do as well. So go ahead.
Okay, Gwen, I have a tuxedo cat too. She looks just like that. Okay,
She
so
likes to make an appearance in my
yeah,
Zooms.
mine does too. Sometimes my door's closed, so she won't be here tonight. But
Okay.
so yeah, I'll introduce myself. My name is Melissa Highland, and let's see, my husband and I will be celebrating our 40th anniversary in June. So, like, I kind of lead with that because I'm thinking that's probably my biggest accomplishment. I mean, being married 40 years, I haven't quite made it yet, but I only got a few more months to go. So I think I'll make it. So, it's not always easy, but we have 6 kids. 3 of them were birth kids and 3 of them were adopted kids. We did foster care for a few years. We fostered over 40 kids, and not at once, of course. And we're missionaries. So we have 12 grandkids. We just had our 12th grandbaby born this month. So we have a dozen now, but we think we're not done probably. So because we still have 2 kids living at home. They're adults, but they're 20 and 26. So so that's a little bit about my background. But really what you want to know about is the ministry. I just want to tell you a little bit about us, who we are. I have been in pro-life ministry since 1995. And so I don't really do like what I think all of you do, birth work. I'm not actually like there when babies are born, but I help to get them to the point that they can be born, I guess, you know. So because it's pregnancy ministry that I've been involved in for 29 years now. So in 1995, I first got involved in pro-life ministry. And people ask me a lot of times, like, you know, what drew me to pro-life ministry? Why did I get involved in it in the first place? And I got involved in it from the beginning, not because I have a specific story myself about, you know, in my family about abortion or anything like that, but really because I wanted to protect babies, and largely because I wanted to use it as an opportunity for ministry, an opportunity to not only protect babies, but to protect moms and to share the gospel with moms. And because we know that when people are in crisis, they're more open to the gospel. I mean, right? Crisis by definition means I don't have the tools that I need to handle my situation, right? Otherwise, if it's just something bad, but we know how to handle it, that's not really a crisis. It's like, oh, I wish this didn't happen, but I can handle it. Crisis means, yeah, I can't deal with this. And so we know that when people are in crisis and they feel like, you know, they don't have what they need, then and they don't. The truth is, right, without Jesus, we don't have what we need to handle life. And so it really is a beautiful opportunity to be able to share the gospel and to say, listen, God sees you. God loves you. God has a plan for you, and he has a plan for this baby. This feels like the end of the road, but it's actually not. God has a beautiful plan for you and for your child. And so I've been able to lead a lot of moms to the Lord through pregnancy ministry over the years, and disciple them. And so that's been a great blessing. So I got involved in pro-life work in 1995 in Pregnancy Center. I lived, at that time, I lived in Maryland and just volunteered at local pregnancy center. In 1997, my family moved to Costa Rica as missionaries, and our family at that time was my husband and myself and our 3 kids. This was before we had ever done foster care. The Lord called us to Costa Rica. We sold all our stuff. We sold like, our house, our cars. We put like everything on our front lawn and sold everything except our clothes. And we thought that we would never come back. I don't mean like we'd never come visit the United States, but we just thought we would live overseas forever. And after only a year, the Lord called us to come back to the US, and we really didn't know why. And it was hard, it was hard to come back, but we also knew that was what God wanted us to do. So we did. We came back, and we found out fairly quickly why he wanted us to come back. One was because our family wasn't complete. That's when we started doing foster care. And we ended up, like I said, adopting 3 kids over some time. So that was the big thing. Our family wasn't complete. And also we started very quickly after we came back, we started taking mission teams around the world. And I couldn't understand like why, we have this call to missions, and most people don't want to move overseas. So why would God, bring us back? And so we realized that one of the reasons was to share that passion. And so we started taking teams overseas. And so we had been taking teams overseas for close to 15 years. And what was happening during that time was I was doing pregnancy ministry work in the United States, and then taking mission teams overseas, but not doing pregnancy ministry work, right? Usually pregnancy ministry work isn't something like you do in a week to 10 days, right? And so we did all kinds of stuff. We did like medical clinics and sports camps and women's conferences and youth conferences, just whatever the missionaries on the field wanted. So so during that time, we were taking mission teams overseas. I was doing pregnancy center work in the United States. And then in 2012, my husband got a call from, we're losing everybody. I hope I'm not, am I boring? Or am I saying controversial things here? I
No,
don't know.
no, you're doing great. Keep going.
I'm getting kind of scared here. Everybody's leaving.
Oh
So
no, you're doing wonderfully. I'm so happy to be here.
okay. I was like, I can pivot here and talk to do something different. Okay. And so my husband got a call in 2012 from somebody that he had worked with, not in ministry, just in his like secular job years before. And he said, I know that your oldest son wants to be a missionary doctor. So I want to give you this house in Costa Rica that he can use to open a medical clinic. And so my husband Ken said, oh, well, he has to finish medical school and his residency, and we'll call you back in 5 years. So my husband came and told me this, and I was like, wait a minute. Somebody tells you they want to give you a house for ministry. You do not say, I will call you back in 5 years. You say, thank you. And so, and I just knew in that moment that God wanted us to start a pregnancy center there in Costa Rica. I had not had like a vision for that, a dream for that or anything, but I just knew in that moment, that's what we were supposed to do. So I said, call him back. So we did. He called him back, and Frank is the donor's name. And Frank was like, oh, I don't know. That's not really what I wanted the house to be used for, but let's get together and talk about it. Like you and your wife and my wife and me, the four of us will get together. So a few weeks later, we got together. Lo and behold, his wife was volunteering at a pregnancy center in her community, and she was all for it. She was like, yes, let's do this thing. So then just like a couple weeks later, my husband Ken, the donor Frank, and I got on a plane to fly to Costa Rica. Now, this had been a period of about almost 15 years. We'd been taking mission teams, but we'd never gone back to Costa Rica. Not because we didn't love Costa Rica, we did, but we never really like picked where we were going to go. It sounds a little bit weird, but it was always like something that God brought to us, like you need to go here, So there we are. It was very surreal, like then getting on this plane, going back to Costa Rica. It was really to a totally different area than where we lived. We didn't know anyone. We were there for a long weekend, the three of us. We didn't have any appointments. We met with government officials, an attorney, pastors, just knocking on doors, and God just like literally opened the doors for us to get like everything in place that we needed to open a pregnancy center there. We didn't have the people, but we had all the stuff in place. So we worked on that for about a year. And then the following year, we opened a pregnancy center in a little village called Tarcolis, Costa Rica. It's a little fishing village. It looks like what I imagine, like when I think about the disciples fishing, it's like little boats and nets, and so we went and we did a training and we opened a pregnancy center there in Tarcolis, Costa Rica. And that was like our thought that it would just be, one and done, and as I said, we hadn't even really had that idea. That came from the Lord. All of it was from the Lord. But then people started asking us in Costa Rica, like in other little communities and towns, like, oh, could we do this here? Could we do this here? And we were like, yeah, sure. So it started to grow within Costa Rica. Then some people in Mexico contacted us and they were like, oh, could we do that in Mexico? And we were like, yeah, sure. And then someone said to me, oh, could you do this in West Africa? And I was like, yeah. But that was like a whole different thing for me because, like I spoke Spanish, not fabulous, but I spoke Spanish, and also, I mean, Costa Rica is much more similar to US culture than West Africa, right? So I really didn't know what to do for that. But I said, okay, because, that's what we do, right? Like if God gives us something, we say yes. I mean, that's really it, And so he's going to figure it out. I mean, not he's going to figure it out. He has it figured out. He's going to tell us what to do. And so then that was a lot of work because then I had to start, up until that point, I had been using the curriculum that I had used in the United States that was already translated into Spanish, right? Because we have a lot of Spanish speakers in the US. So now all of a sudden I had to figure out something that was going to not only need new language, but really like way different culture and everything. And so I started like calling and researching and blah, 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 because I didn't really want to like create something that was already created, but it wasn't. And so, so I ended up coming up with a training of our own that's called Speak Life. And in the beginning, I was like, how am I going to do this? Because, this culture is so different. I don't know it. And, you can't learn it, like can't know it, and, but then it was obvious, what should have been obvious to me from the beginning, just only use biblical examples because that makes sense to everybody, right? That crosses cultures. But I didn't realize that at first. I was like, what am I going to do? And then the Lord was like, come on now, Melissa, you know what to do. Use the Bible. And so, so we wrote a curriculum that we use. And so God has really grown the ministry. So as we sit here now, I don't always have the exact amount because it grows so fast, but we have over 100 pregnancy centers in 29 nations. So the Lord originally grew it in Latin America. And then he added Africa, and it's grown a lot in Africa. We have over 50 pregnancy ministries in Africa. And then he started adding Asia. So we have centers now in India and Myanmar and Nepal. We were in Vietnam a few months ago. We have centers in Vietnam. We have a center in Japan. So, I mean, it's just been amazing what the Lord has done. Actually, I want to read to you the countries where we are, just because it doesn't take long, and I think you might be interested to hear. Ecuador, Costa Rica, Mexico, Togo, Liberia, Tanzania, Zambia, Chile, Haiti, Kenya, Cuba. I just got back from Cuba a couple of weeks ago. That was my third trip there. Uganda, Dominican Republic, Malawi, Ethiopia, Colombia, India, Guatemala, Ghana, Nigeria, Vietnam, Nepal, Burundi, Honduras, Bangladesh, Fiji, Myanmar, Cameroon, and Japan. And it's really exciting. It's particularly exciting to me to be in places like Japan and Bangladesh that are less than 1% Christian. And so these are places where there are very few Christians, right? Like people live there their whole life and they never meet anyone who's Christian. And so it's amazing to me that God has opened doors for us in those places to be able to save babies and to be able to share the gospel, and even, in places like Cuba that are communist. And so, I mean, God is just doing all of this. God does all of this. Like, people ask me sometimes, how do you choose where you're going to go? And I don't. It comes to me. I'll just, sit down at my computer or open up my phone, and then there'll be a request from somebody, wherever it is, Nepal, and saying, I heard that you can train us to do pregnancy ministry, and will you, So the way we do it is that we work with churches. And so what we do is we train churches to use pregnancy ministry to reach their communities with the gospel. And so our centers are almost all, there are a few exceptions, but almost all of our centers are run by nationals. And because we believe that they're the ones that can do it the best, right? They're the ones, not only do they know the language, but they understand the culture. They understand the pressures that women are facing. And of course, there are a lot of things that are similar, but there also are a lot of things that are different. For example, like for me, I really don't have a concept of what it's like to be a Muslim woman in a Muslim country where, my brother is going to like burn down my house if I become a Christian, that kind of thing. Like I can't really, like, we can read about that, but can't really like understand that, or what it's like to be in a country like India, where, you know, the women are treated so terribly. And like when I've been to India, I've seen like these little girls, and I don't know, like, I don't know any of you. So I don't know, like maybe you all know all about this and you have done a lot of living in other countries, but you know, where you'll see little girls and they're all burned up, and it's because, oh yeah, their fathers like push them into the fire. That's like a thing, you know, that we do in India. In fact, in India, it's actually illegal for someone when they're getting an ultrasound, for the person who's doing the ultrasound, you might know this too, to tell the mom whether it's a boy or a girl. It's illegal because they kill all the girls. And so you know, like now they're starting to realize like, oh wait, we need girls for our country. You know, it's just it's an amazing thing. I know we had taken teams to China in the past. And one of the things that I had read when I was studying about taking our teams there is you have to be really careful if you have Asian women on your team, because they are really susceptible to being kidnapped again because they kill the girls there. And so like then they're realizing, oh wait, like we need girls because so that we can have, you know, they can have sons, you know. So there are all these kinds of issues that people face, even like when we were in a training recently, and the pastor from Nepal was talking to us about, you know, legal pregnancies and illegal pregnancies. How do we deal with illegal pregnancies? And I said, well, tell me what that means. You know. And he said, well, you know, if you're not married, then it's illegal for you to be pregnant, you know. So like it's against the law for you to have a baby when you're not married. So I mean, these are like issues that I think are that can be dealt with much better, obviously, by people of that same culture that they really understand. And so, and we train them that wait, you know, you don't have to like build some big fancy building, and you don't have to have like really, you know, like have staff. This is something that God's people can do, and as on a volunteer basis. And you can use donated space. Like we had that house that was given to us in the beginning. Well, we haven't really had any houses given to us again, but we've had lots of places donated, churches that donate space. Sometimes governments will even donate space because they know that like teenage pregnancy is a problem and they don't know how to fix it. And they realize, well, we actually do, right? We know that, you know, you teach abstinence, you teach purity. And we have a training coming up tomorrow about teaching purity in the public schools. And so I'm not saying like that's a perfect, you know, thing, but it is a way of changing culture. Like when people become Christian, when a culture becomes Christian, then it does change things. And so so we have donated space in almost all of our centers. Almost all of our centers are run by volunteers. And so we train them. We used to train them. I used to only train in person, like to go and train people because that's all I knew. Like I didn't know this Zoom. I didn't know it was a thing. I never heard of it. And then when COVID came, which was a bad thing, obviously COVID was bad, but it brought some blessings for us to our ministry, because then, you know, just like we all did, right? We all had to figure out what are we going to do now. And so I'm sure you can't deliver babies via Zoom, but we we had to figure out what are we going to do? We can't just like stop ministering to these girls. And so then we learned about Zoom and we started doing a lot of trainings via Zoom. We still do them in person, but we do a lot via Zoom. And so there are several things that are good about that. One is that obviously we can do a lot more and we can do it a lot cheaper, right? And the other thing is, it used to be that, you know, we go to Costa Rica and we train the people in Costa Rica, and then we go to, you know, whatever country. They didn't know each other. Well, now we do trainings with people all over the world together. And it's really cool because they get to know each other. And a lot of times when we do, even if we do like our Speak Life training, our initial training, a lot of people will come back and take it over and over again, which is great because then the newbies get to hear from people that have done it. Oh yeah, this does actually work, you know, because sometimes people would say like, oh, well, that could never work in Africa. And then they'll say, well, actually, no, it does work in Africa. Like we've been doing it for years now. And so, and I also think that I hadn't really thought about it so much before, but they love being part of a family and not feeling so isolated, like, oh, all over the world. And sometimes for people, it's even like they'll hear, oh my goodness, the things that other people are facing, those are even worse than what we're facing. We thought we had it tough, but we don't have it so bad compared to what other people are facing. And so it's really been a great thing. And then so we have our initial training, which is our Speak Life training, but then we do some kind of a follow-up training every month. And like I was saying, tomorrow we're going to have a training on teaching purity in the public schools. And we've had trainings on a lot of different things, trainings on like abortion pill reversal or post-abortion Bible study. So all kinds, we're always just looking for, what are new things that we can bring so that we're growing not only in breadth, but in depth. We have what we have for our people in addition to these kinds of trainings, we have a whole curriculum which is called Growing Together, and it's a little over 100 lessons written by experts. And you all could write some lessons for it too if you wanted to. So it's just stuff about kind of what's going on in your body week by week, trimester by trimester, how to eat, all kinds of topics, SIDS, breastfeeding, parenting. We also have spiritual lessons in that too. I said it's a little over 100 lessons, about probably about 20 to 25% are spiritual lessons, and the rest are more like physical. And it's interesting, our team in Japan, just recently, they asked for a meeting with me, and we were talking about, they wanted to know about post-abortion Bible study. And one of the things they said is what they always ask here, they're not Christian, but they always ask, where does my baby go? And so they said, could you write a lesson for us on that? Where does my baby go? So we did. So we try to respond to needs that come to us. We had a situation last year in Costa Rica where one of our clients gave birth to a baby with Down syndrome. And so they asked me, can you get us materials about parenting a child with Down syndrome in Spanish? So, we researched that and got, so, as much as we can, we try to respond to the needs of, that the different directors have. We also have devotionals. We have a Mother's Journey, which is a devotional for pregnant moms. Have you seen that, Shanna? Have you seen it? You might be interested in it. It's a devotional for new moms. And so we partnered with Focus on the Family for that. And it's one devotional a week for the 40 weeks of pregnancy. And it just has something simple. It has like a passage and a key verse that has something to do with pregnancy, a devotional, and then a place where they can journal their thoughts. So it might be something that you all might be interested in. And then we have a Mother's Comfort, which is for baby's first year. So it's same format. It's one devotional a week for 52 weeks, right, for baby's first year. And it's same thing where it has a passage and a key verse and a devotional, something about mothering, and then where they can journal their thoughts. And also they can use it as like a, like a keepsake, right? Like Susie sat up today for the first time, that kind of thing. I would have liked to have had something like that I could like look back on now with my grandkids and show my kids. And so those are available in both English and Spanish. And then we also have our newest devotional is called No Shame, and it is for survivors of sexual abuse. So we have that in English and Spanish too. So I think that's just kind of in a nutshell what we do, how we do it, why we do it. And so I think that's a pretty good like synopsis. You said talk for 45 minutes, but that seems like an awfully long time to keep talking about this. But I can talk more. I can tell stories and I can answer questions, but I guess I feel like I would like to pause here and see if anybody like has any comments or questions or,
Yeah, so tell me how that works with the 100 lessons. So I know it's volunteer ran, and you're in countries that Christians aren't even openly allowed to be in. So how does that look? Like, how do they find out about you? And when they come in, how does that go? And how do you get from they come in the door to then them coming to know Jesus?
Okay, yeah. So, it varies a lot, but when they come in the door, it depends because we do free pregnancy tests. So sometimes they're coming in for a pregnancy test. They can buy pregnancy tests, but a lot of these places, the people really do not have much money at all. So like to get it free is a big deal, right? Um, and so, and then as we're talking to them, then we just we give them like, what do I want to say? Like we have a manual with forms in it, like intake forms and stuff like that, that they don't have to use. But it's something they can use them as is, or they can just use them as like a template. Cause I know like for me, if I'm going to do something, I would rather take something that somebody else has done and modify it rather than start from scratch. And so, and part of what we do in our initial training is we teach them biblical examples of how to treat women that are in these unplanned pregnancies, biblical examples of how we speak the truth in love to them, how we are not judging them. And we teach some kind of communication skills, like how to draw information out of people. And just a lot of it is really just listening to them, because so many times these girls nobody's listening to them, right? Everybody's just telling them what to do. And so they don't even have time to process their own feelings about how they feel about being pregnant. And so, so we talk to them and talk to them again about the Lord, and how God has a plan for them. This seems like, such a shock, but what we believe is that there are no unplanned pregnancies by God, right? That all pregnancies were planned by God, right? There certainly are people that are pregnancies that are not planned by people, but there aren't any that were not planned by God. And that the circumstances surrounding the pregnancy do not impact the value of the child, right? Like every child is created in the image of God with a purpose and is loved. And I don't want to say it doesn't matter how the child was conceived, because of course it does for the mom. If the mom was raped or something, of course that matters. That's terrible for her, but it doesn't speak to anything about the child, right? The child is still precious, and so, we gently talk to her about different kinds of things and talk to her about the Lord. And not everyone gets saved, but a lot of them do. And they don't always get saved right away either, but as they come in, so in a perfect world, they will come in once a week throughout pregnancy and baby's first year. And in a lot of our centers, we have ultrasound machines. A lot of our centers, we give away prenatal vitamins. In a lot of our centers, we have something set up where, like, when they come in and do a lesson, they get points. If they do their devotional, they get more points. And then with those points, they can buy stuff for their babies, right? Like diapers and baby clothes. It's not that way everywhere, but in a lot of our centers, it is set up that way. And it's really nice because it's like she's earning something for her baby, right? It's not just a handout. Not that there's anything wrong with giving people things, but the point is that when they do that, they come throughout their pregnancy and baby's first year. It's a period of almost 2 years of one-on-one evangelism and discipleship. And so, like, if she's doing her devotionals, then she is establishing a pattern of reading the Bible, praying, and journaling. So the idea is, hopefully, that after doing that for almost 2 years, that she's going to want to continue with that, right? And of course, again, for the most part, these ministries are a part of a church. So she doesn't have to go to church, but she's there. And so there is like that whole community to continue to help her even after her baby is a year old or 5 years old or whatever. So
You kind of touched on it, but it's all one-on-one based then. So they come in and they meet
for
with
the
mom.
most part. Now, sometimes they do group lessons and everything because, sometimes maybe there are so many women and not enough
Right.
volunteers. So the idea is that it's done one-on-one, but sometimes it can be done in groups too. And sometimes they like that too. So
Awesome.
it's not like a McDonald's. It definitely does not like look the same everywhere, right?
Yeah. That's awesome. So as a birth doula, we generally meet with moms 2 or 3 times beforehand, and then we're there through the birth, and then we meet with them 1 to 2 to 3 times postpartum, just kind of depending on what the woman needs. And then midwives, so there might be some midwives on here. They get, 12 to 15 prenatals, birth, and then, a couple postpartums as well. And I just think how great it is that a midwife gets so many more touch points, but oh my gosh, like 100 touch points. Like, why are we not doing this? Like this, I love it. I love it. I already knew I loved it, but like, I didn't realize that like such an opportunity. And do you know the number of women who do consistently come for a large amount of appointments consistently and kind of like come for a long period of time? Like,
I don't know stats, but I know that we have lots of women
yeah,
that do that. I mean, lots of women that do that. In fact, because I was talking to one of our center directors. So some of the center directors I talk to regularly, and others I don't talk to very often at all. It's really how much they like engage with me.
yeah,
But I think it was last week I was talking to one of our center directors, and she said, we have 70 women that come a month, right? So that's like the same women pretty much that are coming every month, 70. That's a lot in just one location. Now that's a bigger one, right? Some are much less than that, but yeah, we have a lot that come very consistently.
awesome. And then do you provide all the funding for all of the centers then?
So no, not exactly, not really. What we do is we train them to do it in a way that it costs very little, right? Because if it's donated space and it's volunteers, that's your big money, right? Is if you
Yeah.
have to pay rent, and we don't pay rent, and if you have to pay staff, we don't pay staff. So and for the most part, sometimes some places it's harder to get stuff to them, but for the most part we provide for them like pregnancy tests and fetal models and those kinds of things, and we provide devotionals and those kinds of things. Then we have other stuff that we send to them digitally, and stuff that they can do like on their phones. So primarily the only costs they have are like maybe like printing papers out and stuff like that. So it's very, very low cost, and that is really, we do that by design because we feel like, well, I think that's the reason why it's been able to grow so much. And I also just feel like it works better that way, like long term, if they are able to sustain themselves. And also, for example, one time we brought a team to Mexico, and it's a little Mayan village in Mexico where we started a pregnancy ministry, and the ministry's been there quite some time. And it's a small little church with, they have a dirt floor, but they partitioned off a little portion of their small church for the pregnancy ministry. And they built shelves in there, and the devotionals are in there, and the Bibles and fetal models and all that kind of stuff. Well, we brought a team from the United States, and there was somebody that was worked in pregnancy ministry in the US, and she was really mad. And she was like yelling at me and saying, like, there's dust on stuff in there. I mean, I don't know like how much you've traveled internationally, but in developing countries, I mean, there's dust, and so she was like saying, they need to take pride in their work. Well, they did take pride in their work. The fact that they did all that was like amazing. And so anyway, the pastor, I guess, had heard her like yelling at me and stuff. And he came to me later and he said, Melissa, I have to tell you something. He said, this is a little Mayan village. These people all sleep like in cots. They don't really have like furniture. And he said to me, he said, if we built something like you have in the United States, no one would ever walk through the door. It would just be too foreign to them. So I can't even remember what the question was, how I ended up with this. Oh, about the funding. So it does cost a lot of money for us because there's a lot of travel expenses and buying stuff. But as far as, we do not send them like money monthly. We sometimes do send money for certain things, and in a couple of places we've bought vehicles, but basically we train them to be self-sustaining. And one of the reasons is because I mean, I think you probably know this, the American church is pretty fickle, so they might be supporting and like they're all about it. And then all of a sudden there's a new pastor or something new happens, and all of a sudden, whoosh, like whatever it is all gone to something else. And then a lot of times ministries don't survive because of that. So that has been our I guess our model. And it seems to have worked really well for the most part. So
Awesome. All right. I want you ladies to ask your questions. I just thought I would ask those because I know that when we're passionate about what we do, we like forget like some of those
yeah.
details because we know them. And so, yeah, what questions do you ladies have that you can ask her, because it's such a great opportunity.
I'm gonna put our what do you call it, website here in the chat.
Perfect.
So you can see if you want to look. It's beautifulfeetinternational.com.
Is that where you can get those devotions?
No, the devotionals you can get, I'm writing the names of them. You can get them at christianbook.com.
Okay.
Or you can get them at Amazon. I always say go to Christian Book because I think their prices are cheaper, but Christian Book is Christian and Amazon's not. So so yeah, Mother's Journey is for pregnancy, Mother's Comfort is baby's first year, and then No Shame is the for survivors of sexual abuse. And they're in English and Spanish, but you might like them. Do you have any other questions for me?
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, you had me like crying and everything else. Um, I'm just I guess I kind of want to start by just saying like thank you for being here.
Oh,
And you're just such an incredible inspiration.
oh,
And it's so like it's really crazy because this is the second time I've heard recently that someone just saying yes. And because you said yes, so many mamas are getting help, and it's just so big and like way beyond what we could possibly imagine, right?
exactly.
So thank you so much for being here. um my question is, so do any of your centers work with doulas? um and if not, what how do you think that we could come alongside pregnancy centers?
I don't know if we have any doulas. This is the thing that kind of amazes me. Like I imagined before I was doing this work, I imagined that like, oh, when you go to West Africa, that there would be all these like doula, midwife kind of people,
Hmm.
but I haven't seen that. Like, I mean, so these women, so this varies tremendously, right? Like in Costa Rica, it's socialized medicine. Everybody gets medical care during their pregnancy. In fact, they have to. Like, if you are pregnant, you have a pregnancy test done at a hospital or doctor's office or whatever, and you don't get follow-up care, like like Child Protective Services comes after you, like you have to get care. Okay.
Mm.
But then like in Togo, um, like the women never see any doctors or really anybody. Like when we brought my oldest son, the one that the house was supposed to be for him, right? He is our medical director. And he came with me one time when I went to Togo, and he did train midwives there. There was a group of midwives that wanted to be trained, and he trained them in ultrasound. We brought ultrasounds, but like, so when the women came in and we were doing the ultrasounds, none of these people had ever seen like a baby in the womb before, and it was really cool. Like when he was doing the first one, he was like, oh, there it is, there's the baby. And then he was like, oh, there's another one. Like, there were twins. They didn't know, so um so yes, like in that one in Togo, yes, because what happened there was there were actually medical clinics that heard what we were doing, and they said, oh, will you train our midwives so that they're not just doing the physical care, but because it was a Christian organization that was doing, right? That's who does the work, right? In all of these places that were coming to do medical care, but they were like, oh, we want to like, team this up with the spiritual care too. So, but for the most part, no. And how can you help? I don't know, but I think that you can. And so I think that we need to think about that. I think there are a couple of different ways that you could help. Number one, and I don't know because all these things I kind of make it up as I go along. I mean, I'm just telling
I
you the
love that.
truth.
I think
I'm
that's
just
great.
telling you the truth, you know. But I always think like, oh, when like I meet people, there's probably a reason, you know, something that we can
Mhm.
do together, like for the kingdom. So I wasn't actually thinking that before you asked the question, but now I am. And so I think there's two things that I can think of that might happen or might be able to happen. One would be that you all might be, you know, collectively, individually, might be able to write some lessons. Like if you look at our curriculum, you might say, oh, but what about this? Don't you know that they
Mm.
need to know this or that, you know? And so you can write like it just a lesson, right? And or lessons, you know, that are missing, or even like you'll see something and say, well, you know, that's outdated or that needs to be changed. So those kinds of things. And then I also wonder if, you know, I was talking about how we like every month do some kind of a training, if there's something you can do now. Like obviously you're not going to be able to get on a training and teach somebody how to be a doula. I don't mean that. I know that. I know what you do is, you know, that's like saying, oh, come on, and not like teach them how to be a lawyer or something,
Well,
you know.
I think you'd be surprised.
Okay.
You'd be surprised. I think there's a lot. There's a lot that you can teach via Zoom.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah. So you tell me,
Mhm.
because I'm very open to that. Like I'm always looking for that. I'm always just looking for like what's the next thing that they need to know that we need to know that we don't know. So you know, I would love to continue the conversation with you. Let me put my email address in here too. And when I say you, I mean you personally, but also all of you know, whoever's interested in this, because
Yeah, so we just switched over our training we have birth doula training and postpartum doula training into a online portal. So it's not completely self-paced. We do have live interaction classes as well. And I told Melissa before, like I will go to wherever she wants me to go and train up doulas. But she doesn't go to all those places and she does a lot of her training online. But I would be more than happy to offer that to your volunteers, to anybody who would be interested in doing the birth doula training, postpartum doula training, and them joining our classes if they feel like they speak enough English to be able to do that. And yeah, because I would love to see that as they build those relationships spiritually and as sisters in Christ, that if they were to be invited into that space, that they would be able to support well during labor. And I know that's not true in all places, that women aren't allowed to go support them. But I do feel like they could maybe take on a deeper role in doing some of those things if it made sense in, you know, their culture and community. So
yeah, so that's the thing. I think it would vary a lot. Like I think about in Costa Rica, like the way everything is so regulated because of like socialized medicine. I don't even know if that would be allowed.
well, actually there's a ton of
I was gonna
doulas.
say it might be. I don't
Yeah,
know,
there's
you
a
know.
ton of doulas in Costa Rica.
But I know like in Africa for sure, because nobody's, you know,
Right.
nobody's regulating anything, right? So like if you have somebody that, no, really, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not,
no, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So if you have somebody there that like not only cares about you, but knows some stuff about what's going on. Like I've been surprised at how I imagined that there would be like grandmas in the town that
Right.
kind of knew all that stuff. And
Mhm.
maybe there are in some places, but a lot of places there aren't. Like I just thought, you know, some of this stuff seems like you a little bit comes naturally, like, you know what
Right.
I mean? Like,
Traditionally, it was something passed on from woman to woman. You
yeah,
would see your sisters give birth. You would see, you know, your
right,
aunts would come, you know, your grandma would be there, your mom would be there. They would show you how to birth well. They would support you. Then they would help with lactation and postpartum. And then
right.
we've gotten farther and farther away from that. And that's where the doulas step in. But I think culturally, especially in Asian cultures, they're very good at postpartum care, and the way they treat women in the postpartum. In the Western, we are not. In Africa is like hit or miss depending on the cultural background. Um, but yeah, I would be more than happy to come alongside those volunteers and give them more skills, more confidence, more knowledge in some of those areas to be able to even provide more of that, if that's something that they want to do. So
Yeah, I think that there would be people that would definitely be interested in it. Like not everyone, but that's how it is with
yeah,
like everyone takes our initial training, but then the things that we offer, not everyone comes, you know what I mean, for different reasons, but I think there would be people that would be interested in it. Now, some of our directors and volunteers are men, so I don't think we would teach that to the men, right? That's not like a man thing. That's a girl
it's
thing.
not a man thing, but having men involved will help, because what we can do with men is help them feel confident and encouraging the dads, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because especially in Africa. So when we went and trained up doulas in South Africa in Cape Town, they had never even thought about men being present in their kids' births. And so my husband actually did a whole session, and they were like, "What? Maybe men are capable of being supportive in the birth room." And one of the women were pregnant, and she said, I'm gonna let my husband come to this one." And they just didn't think men were capable. And now in a lot of Africa, they don't want to be present. And in Muslim countries, they definitely don't want to be present.
Oh, right.
But if we give them permission and then give them a way to care for them well, even when I work with dads, in America, like I am giving them skills and confidence to like do this, and
Mm-hmm.
this will help your wife, in early labor and things like that before they even go to the hospital or call me. And so I think that men play an awesome role because they can build confidence in the dads that I can't.
And I think like, so like talking about like the written lessons that we would have, like we need some lessons on that. Like I don't have anything on that. So we need some lessons on that. And even like not doula lessons maybe, but just, how to
Comfort
support, right?
measures.
Because remember that we're not looking for things that are super like technical, medical, we're looking for things that are simple, practical, easily translated, which you guys are full of that kind of wisdom, so there's so much that you could add to that. Now, like when you went to South Africa or when you go somewhere and do that doula training, how many hours is it?
So when we go overseas, we usually do 4 days, 4.5 days, depending on what they allow us to do, because we want to give them all of the things as much as we can. So it varies between 24 to 40 hours. Because
Okay.
we give them fertility, we give them breastfeeding, we give them birth, we give them postpartum, we give them loss and bereavement. And we try to give them a little bit of everything, since we can't just like come back next week. Versus what we do online is a little different. We divide it up more Western style, where you take this training and then you can take this training and then you can do this thing. But in
Okay.
person, we try to do like as much as we can in 1 week to just give them as much as we can while we're there.
So you could do some trainings for us via Zoom like that though.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I want to like for sure like plan that. I want to talk about how you did. Now, when we
yeah,
do those trainings, for the most part, we can't do like an all day training just
right.
because these
Nobody
people
wants to do
can't.
that, right?
Yeah. And they don't have the time for that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So typically those trainings that we do they're shorter than that.
Right.
They're not all day,
Right.
but that's some stuff that I like want to do for sure.
Yeah.
We have one of the people on my team is a postpartum doula, which I didn't even like know that that was a thing
Yeah.
before I knew that she did that, but that's what she does. So, and she actually used to be a missionary in Japan. So, she speaks Japanese, and like you said, I mean, she's like in Japan, when you have a baby, like everybody just expects you to just like lay in the bed with your baby and do
Exactly.
nothing else for a
And
long
that's beautiful.
time.
Yeah.
Right, right. That's like what we all think like that we would want to do, but we're not allowed to do that, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, so definitely I want to do that. I want to do some Zoom trainings with you all, and I would love for you to write some lessons for us. And so the lessons are simple. So the lessons are designed like you would obviously write it in English, and then we would get them translated into Spanish and French. We have everything translated into Spanish and French, and then some things here and there are translated into some other languages, Italian, Vietnamese, Japanese, Swahili. But so it's something simple. And the idea is that it's not going to be something that we hand to the client. It's something that the volunteer is going to teach it interactively to the client. So she's going to be teaching it, but if it's something that needs to be explained more, it's one-on-one interactive, and so it's going to, it's going to be short. It's going to be a page or two. And then at the end, usually the way we do it is there's a title, there's a lesson, and then at the end there are questions, at like 2, 3, 4, or 5 questions, to say whatever you would say, what did you learn from this? What, whatever. So I'd like you to, all of you that might be willing to do that, it would be great. And another thing I can do is, if you're interested, we can kind of send you like our table of contents. I don't think you want the whole thing because the whole thing is big, but at the table of contents, so you can see like the titles of our lessons. Cause I feel like when you all see that, you're going to be like, well, why don't you have, there's probably 12 things that right away you're like, well, how come you don't have this? And it's just because I didn't know what I was doing and made the whole thing up, like, so,
You were being obedient. And,
Yes.
and I mean, I
okay.
didn't make up the lessons. Like I researched it, stuff that I got from
Right.
people that wrote it, that knew what they were doing. But I just kind of like sat down on my computer, like Googling, like, what do they need to know? You know what I mean? I don't know. So, I know there's going to be like a lot of holes that will be obvious to you. So.
And Shanna, you're like much, much, much more qualified to do the training. But I'll be your right-hand girl.
I know, for sure. Right. I want to respect everybody's time. Do you ladies have any more questions for Melissa? I feel like we need this in America too. Like, I know we have hope centers and crisis pregnancy centers, and they do, similar things, but I feel like this is just simple and makes sense. And yeah.
Dove and Lioness, you have a question? Well, your microphone turned off. You just have to turn it on. But you have my email, so anyone reach out to me. Beautiful Feet International. We have a Facebook page too, or I'll put my Facebook name on here too if you want to like look for me.
Every Life Diapers?
Are you familiar with Every Life Diapers? No.
Now I need to know what that is.
Your microphone is off. Do you know how to turn it on? Okay.
If I can find her, I can.
Well, if you can't do it too, you can email me. We can talk again. Like, this is not our last chance to talk. I'll tell you something I'm looking for too. I have a connection for prenatal vitamins, but they haven't been able to keep up with our demand. So if you all know of any place that might be willing to donate prenatal vitamins for our international centers, that's a need that we have.
Awesome. Like, she writes that in there. I'm going to pray
Thank you.
Pray for you guys.
Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this group of women today that you've brought, each one of them here, to be able to hear the work that you're doing through Melissa's ministry. And Lord, I just thank you for each one of them who have come, and I'm sure that they all have things swirling in their heads, Lord. And I just pray that they hear your whispers of what it is that you want them to do with this new information, and what that looks like near and far, Lord. I pray for Melissa's ministry and all of her centers all over the world, Lord, and the way that you have just grown that, like she said, wide and deep. And I pray that you continue to give her financial resources. Pray that you continue to give her those connections that only come from you, Lord, and continue to grow that ministry in all the ways that you see fit. And we just thank you for the people that come alongside of her, and the people who just love life and love sharing the gospel through pregnancy, Lord. Thank you for her work. I pray for just a hedge of protection around her, as we know that birth work is spiritual warfare, and that Satan does not like new life, and he does not like the gospel being shared through it. And so I just pray for her. I pray for her clinics and her volunteers, Lord, that you continue to bless them and help them to continue to grow and spread and grow your kingdom, Lord. In your precious name, amen.
Amen.
Got it working.
Amen.
Okay.
Okay.
Yay!
Yeah, so I normally use my MacBook, and then I just got the new iPad, and it's like, your settings are not turned on for the microphone. So yeah. But so Every Life is the only pro-life diaper company in the US right now. They just came out about a year ago. I'm an ambassador for them. And so they're always looking for more ambassadors, and they're kind of just getting started, but they've really taken off. They have had billboards in some major cities with "Make More Babies" is their campaign that's going on right now. And they took an Elon Musk tweet and where he was saying that children are the future, and they put it on billboards, and he was like, I don't know who these people are. He's like, but I definitely like, good for them. I endorse their message. So they're getting their name out there. But they're pro baby, pro mom, pro family. They're a really good organization. And if you hadn't heard about them, I thought I would introduce them to you, and you can learn more about them. But yeah,
Thank
they're
you.
doing a lot of good work. So
That's awesome. And you know, as an ambassador for them, I don't know, but maybe you could like tell them about us, because maybe they might want to like donate some diapers. You know,
Wow.
I'm always looking for, you know, people
Yeah.
that want to donate, and maybe they might be interested since we are like-minded, you know. So,
Yeah. Do you mind sending your email again? Because when I
Yeah.
left, it deleted it.
yeah,
So I
and
will put, so we will have this recording in the Facebook group the website group for Birthwork is
Okay.
Ministry. We'll have the recording. We'll have whatever links she gives to us that we can pass along, that table of context, whatever that looks like, we will have that in the group as well. You can go back and listen to our other recordings as well. So it is a private Facebook website group, and I will add those resources for you too. So you can reach out to her.
Awesome. Thank you.
okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. This has really been, it was a little weird at first. I'm just talking. I don't really like to just talk and talk and talk with no interaction. Like, you know, I'm thinking, I don't even know if anybody cares about this, but thank you. I really appreciate the work that you do. I think like you have exciting lives, right? Like God's given you like a beautiful ministry, right? So thank you for listening to me, and
Yeah, thank you for
God bless you.
sharing, and thank you for what you do, and we appreciate it. And maybe, well, there was a lot of moms that had to go to bed or take their kids to bed, but
I get it.
your message will continue to be heard. I promise. So thank
Oh,
you so much.
thank you. Thank you. Well, hopefully we're going to see each other again, and you're going to be teaching our people. I think you will love it. You'll love to see these people all over the world that are just, they're so eager to learn. I think it'll be a blessing for you too, as well as for them, obviously.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.